My name is Isabella Morgan, 45 years old, a cybersecurity expert who has spent her life navigating the complex labyrinth of codes and networks. I've dedicated years to understanding cyber threats, dismantling attacks, and ensuring the digital safety of those who are oblivious to the lurking dangers online. Yet, nothing could prepare me for the betrayal that would shake my world to its core. It began with a simple notification. A flagged email arrived in my inbox with the subject line urgent, conference details. The sender's name caught my eye, Mark. My husband. The mundane corporate correspondence they exchanged felt innocuous at first. Still, as an analyst by nature, I was drawn deeper into the digital thread. I clicked it open, expecting yet another incident report. Instead, I found a secret intimate exchange, a layered tapestry of affection that revealed an affair with Sophie Reynolds, the eager intern at his company. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the messages, each line dripping with the sweetness of their illicit connection. "You're everything I didn't know I needed. Can you come over tonight?" The words echoed like a drumbeat in my ears. I felt a chill wash over me, not from anger but from a cold, methodical realization. I had been living with a stranger. They overlooked the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. The phrase resonated deeply as waves of composure washed over my thoughts despite the swirling chaos. I couldn't afford to crumble. I needed to analyze, comprehend. I pulled back, my analytical mind clamoring to dissect this betrayal. I reflected on our mutual friends' reactions. It was as if they were watching a tragic play unfold. Friends, family, could they sense it too? The rift now formed between Mark and me felt palpable, yet I would not let it show. I had to keep my composure intact. It struck me hard, the realization that while I had been busy building a career, he had been casually dismantling our relationship. In all our years together, I had often celebrated his successes, synchronizing my achievements in the background. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I supported his career, he chose to define himself through the allure of a younger woman and a false sense of superiority. I took a breath, grounding myself amid the upheaval. Utilizing my unique skill set, I began to map their digital interactions, crafting a web of evidence that would expose the truth. My fingers danced across the keyboard, configuring network logs and tracing IP addresses, a process as rehearsed as my breath. The anger simmered just beneath the surface, but the storm within was controlled and calculated. After a few clicks, I slipped further into their digital lives. The more I uncovered, the more resolute I became. I would not allow this to destroy me. No, I would rise from these ashes, stronger, and more powerful than before. As I analyzed their interactions, I felt the confidence surging through me, a bittersweet balm against the impending heartbreak. I understood Mark's moves, his patterns, the vulnerabilities he exposed in his reckless quest for validation. But this was the first round. The game was far from over. I would become the architect of my resurgence, using the same digital prowess I applied to cybersecurity to dismantle the very foundation of his betrayal. Nothing else mattered now. Not the love I once cherished, nor the life we had built. I was Isabella Morgan, and the storm was just beginning to brew. I think back to the early years of my marriage, when everything felt right. Mark and I were a team, navigating our way through life's challenges with laughter and mutual support. Remembering those days is bittersweet. Flashbacks of us in the park, tucking our son into bed, or cooking dinner together rush in, one after another, painting an idyllic picture that contrasts sharply with the stark reality I now face. I remember the summer we took that trip to the coast, just the two of us. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting golden rays over the water as we shared secrets and dreams. I can still recall the way he looked at me then, as if I held the entire universe in my eyes. I was still an up-and-coming professional, and Mark was there with me, celebrating my achievements while he pursued his own ambitions. Our bond felt unbreakable at that moment, as if we could withstand anything. But that sense of connection began to erode as the years passed. The career accolades that once united us started to divide us. I succeeded, a promotion here, a project completed there, yet he always seemed one step behind, chasing the next validation like a dog chasing its tail. While I immersed myself in my work, one stark realization began to take shape. I was married to a man unprepared for my ascent, and the softer edges of his ego turned sharp, like hidden daggers beneath a facade of support. There were signs, subtle but present. A glance at his phone that lasted a second too long, a moment of silence during post-work conversations that felt heavy with unsaid words. I'd brushed them off, convincing myself that I was being paranoid, that I had read too many romances where the twist was infidelity. But now I could see them clearly, the telling moments I had missed as I became wrapped up in my own ambition. My achievements, it seemed, had cast a shadow over his insecurities. I often spent late nights solving problems that many would find insurmountable, aiming for excellence when all he seemed to want was praise. Professional recognition consumed my thoughts, but as my star rose, so too did the tension that brewed within our home. I had dismissed his changing demeanor, chalking it up to stress or fatigue. I thought I was being a good partner, providing support while he vented his frustrations to me. But I now recognized that the distance between us widened as he sought comfort elsewhere, not only in Sophie's brighter presence but also in the validation that such connections bring. It struck me that their relationship was a mirror reflecting his inadequacies, and I had been entirely unaware. Perhaps he thought I wouldn't notice, or that I'd be broken by this revelation. If only he knew me better. As those memories replay in my mind, I am struck by the juxtaposition of my strengths, professional drive, self-reliance, innovation, and Mark's glaring need for affirmation that sent him into the arms of someone far less substantial. The irony burns. I was supposed to celebrate his successes, but where was he when I needed him in my corner? With this wisdom infused into my resolve, I returned to the task at hand. I'm not just examining digital trails, I'm uncovering layers of deception that have taken root in my life without my noticing. I begin to highlight key messages that mark the progression of their affair, dating events and discussions that hint at collusion on business deals. The deeper I dive into this dark web they spun, the clearer it becomes that this was not a mere dalliance, it was a calculated move against my very essence. It feels empowering to pick through their exchanges, and I hone in on specific events that might link their emotional entanglement to professional gain. Financial records show transactions that raised my eyebrows. Dinner meetings coincided with significant payouts. Annotating these details onto a digital timeline gives the affair a new texture, revealing not just an emotional betrayal but a corporate coup disguised as romance. I make a mental note of the stakes involved, not just my reputation but also aspects of Mark's career that could be jeopardized should I choose to unveil the truth. Each detail I uncover is like a piece of armor, reinforcing my preparations. This isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming my identity, aligning myself as the victor in a game he thought he could control. When did I become an anomaly in my own life? I contemplate this as I execute search after search and compile evidence that both shocks and empowers me. My analytical brain races through defensive protocols, running simulations on how to approach the next steps. I can feel the tension in the air, and even the tiniest hint of weakness is fueling my drive. They think I will be broken by this, that I will dissolve into sorrow. They are wrong. I sift through countless files. Each email, each message, becomes a breadcrumb leading to a trail of deceit. I make connections that intertwine their professional lives with the fabric of their illicit affair, a dark tapestry that could shatter his credibility and propel my return into a spotlight he believed he had dimmed. As I prepare for what lies ahead, the realization dawns upon me: I will not be the broken woman Mark anticipated. I will rise as a force to be reckoned with, the architect of a storm that he never saw coming. The tables are about to turn. With each revelation, the storm clouds grew darker, and the weight of my newfound resolve felt heavier yet exhilarating. I had initiated my probing into Mark and Sophie's interactions, and I was well aware that this was just the beginning of my journey into the labyrinth of lies they had spun. Delving deeper into the digital morass of their affair, I knew I needed a solid plan to track their every move while remaining one step ahead. First, I set my sights on their social networks. Familiarizing myself with the platforms both professionally and personally had equipped me with a keen eye for detail. I logged on to Mark's account, taking mental notes of Sophie's status updates and photos, each portraying a perfectly curated life. It was all too easy to discern her intention, sharing cozy pictures of their work events with captions that painted them as an inseparable pair. I couldn't help but feel a surge of indignation as I witnessed their parade of deception. Users rarely consider the implications of their digital footprints, and it was a flaw I intended to exploit. As a cybersecurity expert, I prided myself on being meticulous, and it was time to embody that principle to its fullest extent. It was time to reach beyond their mundane posts. I began to map out their schedules. I updated my database with timestamps of events they both attended, conferences, networking parties, even casual lunches that hinted at their proximity. By correlating this information with financial transactions, I began constructing a timeline that detailed not just an affair but a complex intertwining of professional misconduct. What's he up to this time? I muttered to myself, scanning each entry on my screen as I tracked their activity. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls, plans that rarely included me, pieces of a puzzle that were falling into place. I could almost see the full picture looming over me, a vivid portrait revealing a betrayal bordering on conspiracy. While I analyzed Mark and Sophie's online personas, a colleague from my cybersecurity firm pinged me unexpectedly. Alex, an astute expert in digital forensics, had noticed a change in my behavior. He reached out, his curiosity blending with genuine concern. "Isabella, you've been a bit off lately. Everything all right?" I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to confide in him about the maelstrom swirling around my life. But instead, I downplayed it. "Just some new projects. You know how it is, endless deadlines." "Right," he responded, his tone reflective. "Remember to take care of yourself. You're running on fumes, and I don't want to see you burn out." This offered a moment of clarity. I had allies in this field, not many, but enough to lend support if needed. I mentally tucked away Alex's contact information, reminding myself that I might need to reach out for backup later. As I delved deeper, it became evident that Sophie, too, was intelligent, leveraging her relationship with Mark for advancement. They met at corporate events, in offices under the guise of working late, exchanging ideas that lead to collaborative projects interlaced with intimacy. I gritted my teeth, anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I knew that anger had no place in my strategy. I would remain cerebral, analytical, and coldly methodical. With the information mounting, the discrete nature of their correspondence and activities posed challenges. Mark is nothing if not cunning. Even I underestimated his capacity for deception. As I gathered more evidence through shadowing their online activity, it became increasingly clear that he was trying to mask his tracks. Changing schedules, coded language, he sought to escape my gaze. I plotted my investigation meticulously, ensuring that I would extract the truth without raising suspicion. A careful compromising of their accounts seemed to be the angle to pursue. It was time for me to tap into my tech skills as I began testing vulnerability points in their networks, exploring weak passwords and unnoticed security gaps. "Two can play this game, Mark," I whispered to myself, a smirk creeping onto my lips as I applied myself to the task at hand. Under the cover of darkness, I employed my methods. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each revealing something pungent hidden beneath. I bypassed firewalls, navigated digital traps, and with each maneuver, I felt the thrill, a sense of empowerment that surged through me, one I had almost forgotten existed. Days turned into a blur of late nights and electric adrenaline as I unraveled their carefully laid out plans. Within a week, I had secured a trove of incriminating evidence, messages, photos, and even shared accounts of financial dealings that intertwined their both personal and professional lives. The dread I had felt was swallowed by confidence. I had harnessed control over my narrative, a narrative marked by betrayal but soon to be reclaimed. With the pieces of the puzzle in my grasp, I could almost taste the sweet tang of vengeance. I was plotting my path toward revealing the betrayal, and I fantasized about the look on both their faces when they realized the web I was enfolding around them. This wasn't just personal, it was professional. And I intended to shine brilliantly in the aftermath. The night air hung heavy with anticipation, the stillness of the room punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of my fingers against the keyboard. I was on the precipice of a decisive moment, time to execute my meticulously crafted plan. Each piece of evidence sat before me, formatted and ready. The messages, once veiled in secrecy, now glared up at me like trophies, demanding my attention and urging me to act. I could almost smell the fear mingling with the scent of betrayal in the air. Over the last few weeks, I had documented every facet of their betrayal, a detailed timeline winding through late-night meetings, intimate messages, and monetary exchanges that felt like daggers thrust deep into the integrity of our lives. Memories of love and laughter twisted into shadows of deceit, taunting me with every glance at the screen. Mark considered himself a chess master, but he had underestimated my resolve, my intellect. It was time to turn that game on its head. I crafted a single email, succinct yet potent. The subject line, "We need to talk," would invoke the curiosity I needed to lure Mark into my web. I finished the email and let it sit for a moment, allowing the gravity of the moment to sink in. With a trembling finger, I hit send and watched as the notification confirmed the delivery. A rush of adrenaline coursed through my veins. There was no turning back now. The ensuing hours stretched into infinity, each tick of the clock amplifying my anticipation. I recalled our previous confrontations and how I had held my tongue, allowing him to dance around my questions, weaving a tapestry of lies. The thought alone sparked an ember of anger, but this time, I would not be the silent spectator. This time, I was the one in control. When the notification indicated he had opened my email, my heart raced. I could practically hear the gears in his head turning, thrumming with confusion. A soft smile crept onto my lips as I anticipated his response. Would he downplay it, turn it into a joke? Or would he finally sense the shadows that loomed closer? Minutes dragged on like hours, until finally, my phone dinged with the sweet sound of his reply. "What's wrong? Do you want to talk tonight?" His disarming tone only served to stoke the fire I had ignited within me. I knew then I would meet him, and this time the roles would be reversed. No more silence. No more passive acceptance. I arranged to meet in a small cafe near our home, neutral territory where no one would prickle at the tension curling around us. The very space where Mark used to regale me with tales of his day, where laughter would spill from our lips with ease. Here, I could look him in the eye when I finally unveiled the truth, shattering his illusions. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee and baked goods, a serene backdrop to the brewing storm within me. I arrived early, seeking a semblance of calm in the chaotic whirlwind of emotions thrumming through my body. As I sipped my drink, I rehearsed the points I intended to raise. I envisioned the moment I would lay down the damning evidence before him. I pictured breaking through the facade he had maintained for far too long. When Mark walked in, his carefree stride seemed misplaced in the atmosphere heavy with unspoken truths. His eyes twinkled the way they always did, betraying no sign of the seismic shifts about to break his facade wide open. We exchanged pleasantries, but beneath the surface, I could sense his anxiety in the way his fingers fidgeted around the mug. As time passed, I orchestrated the conversation toward heavier topics, watching him squirm. "Mark, let's talk about trust." I caught his eyes widening slightly, confusion flitting across his face. I continued, "What does it mean to you? Where does it lie in our relationship at this point? Is this about the project I told you about?" He attempted to veer off the trail, yet I pressed on, committed. "No," I said firmly, my pulse quickening. "This is about something far more significant. It's concerning us. It's about Sophie." I had not even spoken her name in a whisper, but the very air seemed to solidify around us. The brightness in Mark's eyes dimmed slightly, and the color drained from his face. "What do you mean?" he stammered, struggle etching deep lines across his forehead. With a steady breath, I slid a folder across the table containing printed screenshots of their messages and transactional data I had compiled. His eyes widened as recognition dawned. The reality of what I'd uncovered seeped through him like ink spilling onto paper, staining the pristine surface of his calm demeanor. "You have no right to look through my things," he spat, a hardness cloaking his voice. But I could see the tremors, the cracks beginning to form. "I don't need the right, Mark." "Apparently, you've already crossed the line," I replied, my voice unwavering. "This is not just about infidelity, but about deceit and betrayal in a partnership that demanded honesty." As I spoke, I felt invigorated. Each word resonated like an arrow and struck true. I outlined his manipulation, the betrayal of friendship, love, and trust, how it had all unraveled around me. He attempted to deflect, pleading his innocence, but I remained resolute. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I pressed, slicing through his defenses. "The way this all fits together, the affairs in our lives, it's all merged into a grotesque tapestry of lies." Mark's hands trembled slightly, and the once charismatic man I loved now appeared vulnerable and exposed. I watched the realization dawn upon him that I possessed the power to dismantle his carefully constructed world. "Please, Isabella." "I can explain," he murmured, but the tremor in his voice gave him away. I had harnessed the chaotic energy of betrayal and turned it into my weapon. The truth could no longer be hidden. "I don't want explanations, Mark, I want the truth." His silence spoke volumes, a chasm of guilt unfolding between us. For the first time, he was on the defensive, shattering my pretense of vulnerability. My analytical mind relished in his discomfort as I observed the way he paled, realizing that he had no escape this time. As his face fell, a storm of emotions surged within me, relief mingled with a newfound strength, the long-held anguish once chained inside me now finding release. I would not simply be the protagonist of my downfall. I was orchestrating a narrative born from betrayal but now evolving into something so much more empowering. With the shroud of deception finally lifted, I was ready to take the next step. And it would not be one I would undertake alone. As the silence stretched between us, I realized the moment had shifted profoundly. I had wrested control back from the jaws of despair. The air buzzed with tension, and I could see threads of panic weaving into Mark's features. The betrayal that had once threatened to suffocate me now felt like a roaring flame, illuminating the path ahead. I had made my stand, and now it was his turn to reckon with the chaos he had created. "Isabella," Mark spoke, his voice quieter now, almost pleading, a stark contrast to the bravado he had carried just moments before. "You don't understand. I got lost in everything." "Lost?" I echoed, incredulous. "Lost in what? Comfort? Deceit? How exactly do you justify tearing apart everything we built for a fleeting escape?" Realizing I was losing my patience, I took a calming breath, steadying my resolve. I had walked into this meeting prepared for combat, and now, with clarity, I could see that he was fighting not just for our relationship but for his own self-preservation. And that revelation ignited a simmering rage within me. My mind worked quickly, evaluating my next move. I wouldn't just expose him, I would ensure he understood the depth of his actions. "But I'm willing to change, Isabella. We can work through this," he pleaded, desperation making his eyes shimmer with unshed tears. "Work through this? After everything you've done?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You destroyed our life together, Mark. And you think saying you'll change will magically erase the damage?" I reached for the folder again, flipping through the pages until I found what I was seeking, proof of collusion between Mark and Sophie that went beyond the physical affair. I slid a paper across the table detailing a recent merger they had conspired around, steering conversations towards a deal that benefited only them. Mark's expression shifted from despair to understanding, the light dawning in thick, heavy layers. "You took financial advantage of this." The affair was not merely personal, but a professional betrayal wrapped in a pretty bow. For a few seconds, he sat in silence, grappling with the reality of the evidence laid bare before him. I could practically hear the wheels in his mind turning, desperately rearranging the pieces of his justifications onto an entirely new board. I never meant to hurt you. I thought. I don't know what I thought, he mumbled, employing the same excuse that had lost its potency long before. But you did hurt me, I pressed on, the urgency in my voice mounting. You dismantled trust. You brought dishonor, not just to our partnership, but also to the people working beneath you. They deserve to know the truth about who they are working with. You wouldn't do that, he whispered, incredulous, scanning my eyes for some hint of mercy he could grasp onto. Watch me, I replied, my tone icy. It was critical for me to recognize the metamorphosis that had unfolded. This wasn't merely about Mark's betrayal, it was about reclaiming my power and restoring my sense of agency. His brow furrowed as he processed my words. Isabella, please, let's not take this to the extremes. But I was no longer listening. I had become the architect of my own resurgence, and I envisioned each step forward with painstaking clarity. I had not only unearthed his secrets, but I had also amassed an ally in my journey of recovery. I had a clear understanding of the people who had rallied behind my demise due to his decisions. It was time to leverage that latent resentment into action. I thought of Alex, who had seen the slivers of change in me. He could assist in ensuring that Mark complied or faced the consequences. I have most of the evidence needed to expose you, Mark. And I will not hesitate to do so, I stated cannily, my resolve hardening like steel. The glimmer of desperation in his eyes deepened. It was like a fragile glass, knowing it could shatter at any moment. What do you want? I can make amends. We can call it off. With every word, I felt empowered. I was no longer chasing the remnants of what once was. I was actively carving out a future built on the truth. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, holding my head high. I want my life back. And to take down everything you built on deceit. He dropped his gaze, shame washing over him, crashing waves against the walls of our past life. Isabella, you're so much stronger than I gave you credit for. That's precisely the problem, Mark, I said, fierce and unrelenting. You thought you could build your superiority on my vulnerability. You thought I wouldn't rise from the ashes you lit. But look where we are now. His resolve flickered, and in that moment of vulnerability, I felt a pang of pity for the man I had once loved. But I pushed it aside, the time for soft-heartedness was over. I expected no compassion from him during this chaos. I would collapse any illusions of camaraderie. This isn't just personal, my career is at stake. You need to understand that, I said, building the narrative in my mind, recognizing how much this moment represented not just closure, but liberation. As we sat across from one another in a sanctuary of bitter memories and emerging truths, I formulated my next move. I would include his supervisors in this equation. They deserved to know the full extent of what their employee was capable of, and I grimaced at the thought, but I also felt a sense of liberation. I raised my chin higher, meeting his gaze once more as determination surged within me. I'll be contacting you soon with assurances about our next steps. Our business partnership ends here. As for the rest, it's a matter of your own morality from this moment in. With that, I stood up from the table, the echoes of our past mingling with the resolute paths of our futures. I felt lighter, more vibrant, and overwhelmingly aware of the strength that loyalty to oneself could yield. As I stepped out of the cafe, the warm air enveloped me, like a welcoming embrace. I knew I was no longer the woman weaving through the shadows of betrayal, but a warrior emerging into the light, prepared to reclaim every last fragment of my life. With each passing moment, I could feel the chains binding me to the past loosening. With clarity of purpose and strength, the storm within me had stilled, replaced by an eye of insight that promised total reclamation of self. The blaze of my defiance would emanate into the world, no more disillusionment. I was the master of my fate now. The days that followed my confrontation with Mark were a whirlwind, filled with a mix of fear and exhilaration that danced through my veins like wildfire. Every mundane interaction at the office took on new meaning as reality set in. I was no longer ensnared by Mark's shadow. I had stepped back into the light of my own empowerment, and it felt invigorating. Recognizing the need for a solid anchor during this turbulent time, I reached out to Alex. We had built a friendship founded on honesty, and I trusted him to help me keep my head straight. We agreed to meet at a small, intimate bar on the corner near my apartment, where the employees knew us by name. As the golden hour sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over everything, I felt a sense of calm wash over me when I saw him approach. "Isabella, it's so good to see you. How are you holding up?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and replied, "Better than I have been in a long time. But I need your help more than ever." With a quick nod, I recounted the whole ordeal, the betrayal, my decision to confront Mark, and the evidence I had gathered. Every detail followed like a carefully woven thread in the fabric of my story. As I laid it all out, I could see Alex's brow furrowing with concern. "So you're going to take this to a higher authority?" he asked, disbelief mingling with admiration in his tone. "Absolutely," I affirmed. "It's not just about me anymore, it's about everyone affected by his decisions. I want to stand up and be counted. If I don't act, nothing will change, and I can't live with that." "I admire that. But are you really ready for this?" he asked, the seriousness of the situation creeping into his voice. The question resonated deep within me, a reminder of the chaos ahead. Yet, I felt a wave of resolve wash over me. "Yes, Alex. I'm ready. I have to be." As the conversation unfolded, we began to formulate a plan. Sending a formal email outlining all my findings seemed the most strategic path. It would lay out everything in writing and provide evidence that couldn't simply be denied or swept under the rug. We spent hours discussing the best way to present the information, deciding on a professional tone while highlighting the gravity of the situation. The day I finally hit send felt monumental. It resonated like a thunderclap in the silence of my apartment, a declaration that I would no longer be silenced. Anxiety gripped me in the hours that followed as I awaited a response. Would Mark retaliate? Would they take my claims seriously? And then, finally, a reply came. It was from Mark's superior, acknowledging receipt of my email and requesting a meeting to discuss the matter further. My heart raced in my chest, I felt unmoored yet strangely empowered. When the day of the meeting arrived, I donned my best suit, something that screamed professionalism rather than vulnerability. As I stepped into the office building, I could feel the weight of opportunity in the air. This was my moment to take back control. "Nice to see you again, Isabella," Mark's supervisor greeted as I entered the boardroom. The look on his face was a mixture of concern and curiosity, echoing the tension that stretched across the table. Mark was there, his expression unreadable as he kept his eyes trained on me. I took a steadying breath, feeling the storm of emotions swirling inside. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," I said, keeping my tone firm but steady. I wanted to discuss serious matters that affect not only my career but the integrity of this organization. With unwavering focus, I unveiled the evidence piece by piece, methodically laying out the timeline of Mark's actions, the messages, the inappropriate meetings, the financial discrepancies that hinted at collusion with others. Each revelation hung in the air, palpable and heavy. Mark's expression shifted, uncertainty creeping in as he tried to regain control of the narrative. "Isabella, this is a misunderstanding. We can talk about this. I was going through a rough time," he stammered. "Rough time or not, it does not justify your actions," I countered, the fire within me igniting. "Your decisions have put others at risk, and that cannot stand." The room fell silent, Mark's protestations fading into the background as the weight of reality settled heavily. I saw his fingers fidgeting, a flicker of panic now evident in his eyes. As I continued, I could feel my confidence surging. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about accountability. "I am requesting a full investigation into these matters," I declared, a sense of power enveloping me. "It is crucial for the sake of every employee here and the integrity of this company." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his bravado crumbling under the pressure of the truth. I could see the realization wash over him, his power was slipping away, and no amount of charm could save him now. As the meeting concluded, I walked out of that boardroom feeling lighter than air, a rush of relief coursing through me. It felt as though I had finally emerged from the suffocating grip of betrayal and stepped into a world of possibilities. I was no longer simply a victim in this narrative, I was the hero of my own story. Each step away from that office was a step toward reclaiming my life, my identity, my decisions. As I exited the building, the sky seemed a little bluer, the air a little sweeter. I had stood tall amid the storm and weathered it with grace. I glanced back at the imposing structure behind me, once a symbol of my fear, now transformed into a prison of lies rattled by the winds of truth. I took a deep breath, allowing the fresh air to rush into my lungs, filling me with vigor and determination. My journey had only just begun, and the road ahead lay vast and unwritten before me. The blaze of my defiance was just the beginning. I was prepared to illuminate the shadows with my strength and conviction, forging a future built on honesty, resilience, and empowerment. With a stride rooted in purpose, I felt ready to embrace whatever life had in store. This was my moment, where the past melded into the present, carving space for every new possibility waiting to unfold. I would ensure that every chapter of my life was defined by my choices, rewriting my destiny one bold decision at a time. In the days following my decisive confrontation with Mark, a mix of hope and trepidation filled my heart. I had sparked change, but the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty. The office atmosphere morphed, tension hanging thick in the air as whispers of my confrontation circulated among colleagues. I felt exposed, yet a new sense of strength coursed through me. I was no longer a silent participant in these events. In the midst of the chaos, I turned to Alex, my steadfast ally. One evening, we met at the bar where our friendship had deepened over countless confessions. He could sense my anxiety as I spilled my thoughts over a glass of wine. "I know I did the right thing," I said, my voice steady. "But I can't shake the feeling that Mark will strike back." Alex took a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You've taken a brave step, Isabella. Just remember that you're not alone in this. We'll weather whatever storm he brings." His reassurance warmed me. I needed to actively guard my resolve against the impending wave of retaliation I feared. I began preparing myself mentally to face any onslaught, whether it be baseless accusations or attempts to sway my colleagues against me. As the investigation pressed forward, the company called a town hall meeting, a gathering where emotions ran high, and every eye felt like a spotlight on my back. I knew Mark would try to twist the narrative, to portray himself as the victim of a conspiracy, and my heart raced at the thought of it. On the day of the meeting, I arrived early, my pulse quickening as I scanned the room filled with familiar faces. I sat next to Alex, who offered a reassuring nod. As Mark took the stage, I could sense his desperation seeping through his articulate speech, cloaked in charm yet laced with tension. He attempted to undermine my credibility, painting the situation as a misunderstanding rather than a reality grounded in fact. "Those of you who know me understand my commitment to this company," Mark began, presenting himself as the wronged party. My stomach churned at his manipulation. It was time to act. Rising from my seat, I interrupted him, my voice cutting through the noise. "That's not the truth, Mark, and we all know it. What you've done has consequences." Gasps and murmurs bubbled throughout the audience, surprise and intrigue evident on every face. With my heart pounding, I pressed forward, every word fueled by determination. "We deserve transparency, and the people in this room deserve to work without fear or manipulation." Mark's bravado cracked. He looked blindsided, caught off guard by my boldness. I could see doubt flicker in his eyes, and that moment of vulnerability served as the catalyst for others to join me. Colleagues began to stand, sharing their stories, their frustrations, their experiences in an environment that they too had found stifling. With every voice lifted, the momentum shifted. A fire ignited in that room as unity blossomed against a common adversary. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere brimmed with newfound energy. Walking out of the building, I felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by elation. I had transformed from a beacon of self-doubt into a leader, uniting voices that had long been hushed. Returning home, I stood before the mirror, allowing myself a moment to absorb the change. The reflection that stared back wasn't just a survivor, it was a beacon of resilience. I was more than an employee, I was a force for change. As I settled into bed that night, exhaustion washed over me, but it was the sweet fatigue of purpose. I realized that this journey was about much more than me. It was about empowering others to take a stand against injustice in their own lives. Together, we could be the force that redefined our workplace, pushing for accountability and a culture built on honesty. With dreams of a brighter future swirling through my mind, I drifted off to sleep with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be transformative, and I was prepared to face every challenge with steadfast conviction. I would not just rewrite my story, I would contribute to a collective narrative of strength and resilience, reminding myself and those around me that our voices mattered, and together we could bring about meaningful change.